The moment she saw him smiling under the crystal chandelier with his new wife on his arm, Sienna Blake felt nothing. Not anger, not heartbreak, just calm. Across the grand hall of the Caldwell Gallery, Derek Lawson stood like a king who thought he had built his empire alone. Cameras flashed around him. Investors laughed at his jokes. His blonde wife clung to his arm like a trophy polished for display. He looked proud. He had no idea she was in the room. And he had no idea that the Korean investor who funded his IPO had spent 6 months studying the truth. Sienna lifted her champagne slowly, her dark eyes locked on her ex-husband. "Is something wrong?" Maya Chen whispered beside her. Sienna's lips curved into a soft smile. "He built a $100 million company on my algorithm." Maya choked on her drink. "You are evil. I love you." "The least he can do," Sienna said calmly, "is explain how it works." 3 years ago, Sienna had walked out of her marriage with a suitcase, a laptop, and silence. Derek's lawyers had called the divorce settlement generous. They thought she was lucky to leave with anything at all. What they did not know was that Maya had hidden something inside that settlement, a clause buried deep in Section 9. A clause written so carefully that even experienced lawyers skimmed past it. 20% equity, activated if the company ever went public. At the time, the company was worth almost nothing. Investors were promises. The technology was unfinished. Derek's charm was the only thing keeping it alive. They signed. Sienna walked away, and she waited. Now the company was worth $380 million. And tonight, it had gone public. Across the gallery, Derek stood before a screen, displaying his so-called genius invention, the AI authentication system that changed the art world. The system that identified real masterpieces from fakes in seconds. Her system. He gestured confidently at colorful graphs. "Our algorithm identifies micro-variations, invisible to the human eye." Maya leaned closer to Sienna. "He sounds like he memorized this from a speech coach." Sienna's phone buzzed softly in her hand. "Tae-hyun, in position. Ready when you are." Her heartbeat stayed steady. "Give me 5 minutes," she replied. She wanted to watch Derek dig his hole deeper. The crowd gathered around him as he demonstrated the software on a disputed painting. Phones were raised. Investors leaned forward. Reporters whispered. He did not know the trap was already closing. "Remind me why we're not suing him?" Maya asked. "Because lawsuits take years," Sienna answered. "This is faster." Maya grinned. "I respect the patience." Derek's laughter carried across the hall. He looked confident, untouchable. Then Sienna stepped forward. "Derek," she called. His smile froze. His face went pale. "Sienna." His new wife blinked. "Baby, who is this?" Quote, "An old colleague," Derek replied quickly. "Colleague." The word almost made Sienna laugh. "I just have a small question about your algorithm," she said sweetly. The room quieted. Derek kept smiling, but a thin line of sweat appeared near his temple. "Perhaps this isn't the right venue for technical questions." "It's very simple," she said gently. "How did you solve the training data problem for Baroque paintings when the sample size was statistically insufficient?" He blinked. "The training data was optimized through iterative processing." "Iterative processing," she repeated calmly. "And the neural network architecture?" "Standard protocols." "Which protocols?" A murmur spread through the crowd. Maya whispered loudly to a nearby investor. "This is better than television." Derek's jaw tightened. "Sienna, this is not appropriate." From the back of the room, a calm male voice spoke. "I think it's very appropriate." The crowd parted. Tae-hyun Choi walked forward. Tall. Controlled. Dressed in a black suit that fit like power itself. His presence shifted the air. He stopped beside Sienna, close enough to make a statement without touching her. "Mr. Choi," Derek said, forcing a smile. "I didn't realize you arrived." "I've been here," Tae-hyun replied softly, "listening." His dark eyes never left Derek's face. "I invested $75 million in your company this morning. he continued. I would love to hear the details of the technology I paid for. Silence fell heavy over the gallery. Derek's fingers trembled slightly as he turned back to the screen. Of course, he said too loudly. The system begins by analyzing paint compounds. Actually, Sienna said calmly, stepping closer, that's secondary. The primary function is brushstroke mapping. His hand froze. She watched the confidence drain from his eyes. A modified convolutional neural network, she continued clearly, with a custom loss function designed to handle irregular pigment data. The crowd shifted, confused. Derek swallowed. Sienna worked on early development. Worked on? Maya repeated under her breath. Tae-hyun's voice cut through the room again. The patent filed 6 months ago uses identical architecture. Derek's face lost color. Demonstrate it, Tae-hyun said. Not a request. Derek tapped the tablet. His movements were uncertain. He opened the wrong menu. An error message appeared. There's a connectivity issue, he muttered. There isn't, Sienna said softly. You opened diagnostics instead of analysis. Gasps rippled through the audience. Before he could protest, she took the tablet from his shaking hands. And the system came alive instantly. Smooth. Elegant. Alive under her touch. This, she said to the crowd, is how it works. Her fingers moved with memory and ownership. She explained every layer, every function, every breakthrough. The screen filled with cascading data. The painting was authenticated in 47 seconds. She turned slowly to Derek. Remember the 3 years I spent building this? Quote. He said nothing. Tae-hyun stepped closer, his hand resting at the small of her back, a silent claim. And then he spoke. As of this morning, he said calmly, Sienna Blake owns 20% of this company. Shock exploded across the room. And I own 30%. Derek stared at them like the world had cracked open, which it had, 50%, controlled by the woman he erased. And the man he underestimated. Sienna looked at her ex-husband one last time, calm, unshaken. You built your empire on my mind, she said quietly. Tonight, I'm taking it back. And this was only the beginning. The silence in the gallery did not break gently. It shattered. Whispers turned into gasps. Gasps turned into questions. Cameras lifted higher. Reporters pushed closer. The soft music in the background suddenly felt out of place, like it belonged to another world. Derek looked around as if someone might save him. No one did. Brittany's fingers tightened around his sleeve. Derek, what is he talking about? 20%? 30%? He did not answer her, because he could not. Tae-hyun stood calm beside Sienna, his hand still resting lightly at her lower back. It was not possessive. It was protective. And everyone in the room understood that difference. The divorce settlement included a contingency clause. Tae-hyun said smoothly, addressing the room like a man presenting numbers, not destroying a life. Activated upon a liquidity event, an IPO, for example. He glanced at his watch, which cleared at 9 this morning. Quote, a board member near the front swallowed hard, at a valuation of $380 million. Maya raised her champagne. Math is beautiful. Derek's lips parted. That clause isn't enforceable. Maya tilted her head. Your lawyer signed it. I have the notarized copy saved in 3 different clouds and a hard drive labeled Derek's mistake. A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the crowd. Sienna did not laugh. She stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. You filed patents under your name alone. You stood in interviews and said you built this system from scratch. You erased me from the story. Derek shook his head quickly. That's not true. You introduced me as your wife who helped with technical things, she replied. You told investors it was your vision. You let them believe you wrote every line of code. Her eyes did not leave his. I did write every line of code. The truth hung in the air like smoke. One of the tech journalists raised a phone. Ms. Blake, can you confirm you are the original architect of Lawson Authentication's AI system? Quote. Before Derek could interrupt, Tae-hyun answered. My firm conducted 6 months of due diligence before investing, he said calmly. We reviewed the original development files from 2019 to 2022, all authored by Sienna Blake. The words landed like a final blow. Brittany's face drained of color. Derek, is that true? He ran a hand through his hair. She was part of the team. I was the team, Sienna corrected. The board director, who had been watching, quietly stepped forward. She was elegant, controlled, and very aware of the cameras now recording everything. Mr. Lawson, she said coolly, your inability to explain the core technology is concerning. Derek turned toward her, panic flashing across his face. This is a setup. No, she replied, this is accountability. The word felt heavier than any insult. Reporters began firing questions. Did you knowingly misrepresent authorship of the algorithm? Was investors' money secured under false claims? Mr. Choi, did you plan this confrontation? Tae-hyun did not look at them. He only looked at Derek. You underestimated two things, he said quietly. Her intelligence and my patience. Derek's jaw tightened. This is between me and my ex-wife. Tae-hyun's eyes darkened. You exploited her, he said, voice low but sharp. You erased her name from her own work. That makes it my concern. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Sienna felt it too. The quiet power in him. The control. The danger that did not need to be loud. She placed a hand lightly on his arm. I've said what I came to say, she told Derek. He looked at her desperately now. Sigh, we can fix this. We can negotiate. We already did, she answered. 3 years ago. You signed. Brittany stepped back slowly, as if the man beside her was someone she no longer recognized. You told me you built it, she whispered. Derek did not respond. Cameras flashed again. The gallery had turned into a battlefield, and Derek was losing. Taehyun's security team moved subtly into place, forming a respectful barrier around Sienna. We're leaving, he said softly to her. She took one last look at Derek. For years she had imagined this moment with anger, with rage, with tears. Instead, she felt light, free. As they turned toward the exit, Derek's voice cracked behind them. Sienna, wait. She paused, but did not turn. What? She asked calmly. You're really going to destroy everything? He demanded. She faced him slowly. I'm not destroying anything, she said. I'm taking back what was always mine. The doors of the gallery opened. Cold night air rushed in. Outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb. The kind of car that did not need to announce its value. It simply existed with quiet authority. Tae-hyun opened the door for her. Before she stepped in, she heard Brittany's voice again. Derek, do you even know how your own system works? The silence that followed was louder than any answer. Inside the car, the city lights blurred past the window. Maya slid in beside them, already scrolling through her phone. Tech, CEO exposed, is trending, she announced. So is Sienna Blake. Sienna leaned back into the leather seat, exhaustion finally touching her shoulders. You okay? Tae-hyun asked softly. She nodded. I waited 3 years for tonight. His gaze softened in a way no one else ever saw. You were patient, he said. Most people would have burned everything down. I wanted him to succeed, she admitted quietly. Just enough. He understood. If the company had failed, her 20% would have meant nothing. But now it meant power. Real power. Her phone buzzed. A message from Derek. We need to talk. Please. She stared at it for a second, then handed the phone to Tae-hyun. He did not even read it fully. Block him, he said simply. She smiled and did exactly that. Outside, the city moved, as always. Neon lights. Dark streets. Hidden deals happening in shadows. Tae-hyun watched her carefully. You know this isn't over, he said. The board will call an emergency meeting. Lawyers will circle. The press will dig. Let them, she replied. Her voice was no longer shaking. I have every file. Every timestamp, every draft with my name on it. Maya grinned. And I have the divorce clause framed in my office. Quote, Sienna looked out at the city skyline. 3 years ago, she had walked away quietly. Tonight, she had walked back in and changed everything. But deep down, she knew something else had shifted too. Derek had lost control of his company. But he had also just made an enemy of a man who did not forgive betrayal. And in Seoul's underworld, when someone like Tae-hyun decided to protect something, he did not let it go. Not ever. The real war was only beginning. The next morning, the headlines were brutal. Tech genius exposed. CEO cannot explain own algorithm. Who is Sienna Blake? Derek did not step into his office. He was summoned. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 10 sharp. No delays, no excuses. Sienna arrived 5 minutes early. Not to intimidate, just to remind them she belonged there. The conference room was cold and made of glass. The city stretched wide behind it like a silent witness. Board members sat around the long table, papers stacked neatly, expressions serious. Derek walked in last. He looked different. Less polished, less sure. His tie slightly crooked, his eyes tired. He did not look at Sienna. Tae-hyun sat beside her, calm as always. He did not speak, but his presence alone shifted the balance of the room. 50%. Everyone knew it. The board director cleared her throat. Let's begin. She turned to Derek first. Mr. Lawson, we need clarification regarding authorship of the core AI system. Derek inhaled slowly. Sienna contributed during early development. Sienna did not move. Contributed? The director repeated. He swallowed. She handled technical implementation. But the vision was mine. Sienna finally spoke. The vision? She asked quietly. You mean the idea to apply neural networks to art authentication? Yes. That idea existed in academic papers years before you ever mentioned it, she replied. What didn't exist was the architecture that made it work. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed timestamps, code commits, emails, patent drafts with track changes. My name, she said calmly, is on every original build file. The room filled with the soft sound of pages turning. One of the board members adjusted his glasses. These dates go back to 2019. Yes, she answered, 3 years before the first investor pitch. Derek's jaw tightened. We were married. It was shared work. No, Sienna said, her voice steady but firm. It was my work. You were building a brand. I was building the system. Silence pressed in. The director folded her hands. Mr. Lawson, why were patents filed solely under your name? Derek looked trapped. That was a legal strategy, he said. It simplified ownership. Maya, sitting at the far end as legal counsel, smiled slightly. Simplified for who? No one laughed. Tae-hyun finally spoke, his voice low and controlled. My firm does not invest in fraud. Every head turned toward him. We invested based on intellectual property strength, he continued. If that intellectual property was misrepresented, we have options. Options. The word sounded like a warning. Derek understood it too. Are you threatening to pull funding? He asked sharply. I am stating facts, Tae-hyun replied. The board director leaned back in her chair. We're not terminating you, she said to Derek finally, but you will step down as CEO effective immediately. The words landed like a hammer. Derek's hands clenched. You can't remove me from my own company. You own less than 50%, she reminded him, and you have lost investor confidence. He looked at Sienna then, really looked at her. There was anger in his eyes, but also something else, fear. And who replaces me? He asked bitterly. The director turned toward Sienna. We would like Dr. Blake to take over as CEO. Sienna shook her head immediately. No. The room blinked. Derek stared at her in disbelief. You don't want it? He asked. No, she replied calmly. I want Chief Technology Officer. The director raised an eyebrow. Explain. I built the system, Sienna said. I want control over its future. I want my name on every patent I authored. I want authority over research and development. And I want public acknowledgement. Derek let out a short laugh. So you can humiliate me more. Quote. She looked at him evenly. I don't need to. Her gaze softened, but not with kindness. "I just want my work back." The director nodded slowly. "Those terms are reasonable." Derek's face hardened. "And what is my role?" "Chief Strategy Officer," the director answered. "You will focus on partnerships and expansion. You will not oversee technical operations." It was a polite demotion, but a demotion all the same. The paperwork was placed in front of him. For a moment, he did not move. Then he signed. The scratch of his pen against paper echoed in the quiet room. Just like that, the power shifted. The meeting ended, but no one rushed out. Investors approached Sienna instead of Derek. Engineers waited outside the room, whispering her name. Dr. Blake. The title felt new. She had finished her PhD quietly during the last year. Something Derek once called unnecessary. Now it felt earned. As the room emptied, Derek lingered. "You planned this with him," he said quietly. "Yes," she answered. "You used him." Tae-hyun's eyes darkened slightly, but he did not interrupt. Sienna met Derek's gaze. "I chose someone who saw me." That hurt him more than the board decision. "You could have come back to me," he said softly. "No," she replied. "You only wanted my mind, not me." Derek had no answer for that. He walked out alone. That evening, Sienna stood in the company's main tech lab, her lab now. Engineers watched her with a mix of curiosity and respect. "I don't care about titles," she told them. "I care about building something better." They listened. Because she spoke like someone who understood every layer of the system. Later that night, as she and Tae-hyun stood on the balcony of his penthouse overlooking the city, she finally allowed herself to breathe. "It feels strange," she admitted. "I thought revenge would feel louder." "It's not revenge," he said quietly. "It's correction." She smiled slightly. Down below, the city lights flickered like secrets. "You know he won't stop," Tae-hyun added. "I know." Derek was ambitious, prideful, cornered. Cornered men made desperate choices. Tae-hyun's phone buzzed softly. He glanced at it once. His expression changed almost invisibly. "What is it?" she asked. "A reminder," he said calmly, "that business enemies are predictable." She studied him. "And unpredictable enemies?" He looked at her then, dark eyes steady. "They disappear." A chill moved through her. Not fear, understanding. Derek had lost control of his company. But he had not yet accepted defeat. And in a world where power, money, and pride collided, someone was going to make a dangerous mistake. The question was who? 2 weeks after the board meeting, Derek made his mistake. It started quietly. An internal email leaked to a tech blog. It claimed that Sienna had manipulated the divorce clause unfairly, that she had tricked Derek when the company was struggling, that she was trying to take over something she did not build. The headline spread fast. "Gold digger ex-wife seizes control of tech empire." Sienna read it without emotion. "They're pushing a narrative," Maya said, pacing inside Sienna's office. "He wants public sympathy." Tae-hyun stood by the window, watching the city below. "He's desperate," he said calmly. "Desperate men are loud." Sienna placed her phone down. "Let him be loud," she replied. "I have proof." And she did. But Derek did not stop at headlines. 3 days later, a senior engineer in the company's research team resigned suddenly. He claimed Sienna had created instability in leadership. He claimed the future of the system was uncertain. It was subtle, but it was sabotage. That night, Sienna sat alone in the tech lab long after everyone left. The lights were dim. The monitors glowed softly in the dark. She replayed system logs, access history, file transfers. And then she saw it, an attempt to copy core architecture files, blocked by internal security. Attempted from Derek's credentials. Her stomach tightened. He had tried to duplicate the system. If he could not control it, he wanted leverage. Her phone buzzed. Tae-hyun. "I know," he said before she could speak. "You traced it?" Quote, "My team monitors investment risk closely." His voice was calm, but colder than usual. He accessed restricted files at 11:42 p.m. Sienna exhaled slowly. "He's going to start something." "No," Tae-hyun corrected gently. He already did. The next morning, Derek requested a private meeting. Sienna agreed. They met in a smaller conference room. No board members, no cameras, just the two of them. Derek looked tired, but his eyes were sharp again. "You're turning everyone against me," he said immediately. "You did that yourself," she replied. He leaned forward. "You think you won because of a clause, because you embarrassed me? I won because the truth exists." He laughed quietly. "You always were naive." Her expression did not change. "Am I?" He lowered his voice. "There are investors who don't like instability. If I leave completely, the company drops. Your shares drop. You lose." "You're threatening to tank your own company?" she asked. "I'm protecting what I built." She stood slowly. "You didn't build it." He stood too. "I built the brand, the relationships, the image." "And I built the engine," she said. Their eyes locked. For a second, the past flickered between them. Late nights, shared dreams, the early days when they believed in each other. Then it disappeared. "You could have stayed quiet," Derek said softly. "You could have let me lead." "And stay invisible?" she asked. He did not answer. She stepped closer. "You never wanted a partner. You wanted a shadow." The words hit harder than any public humiliation. Derek's face hardened. "You think that man protects you?" he asked suddenly. "You have no idea who he is." Sienna's voice remained steady. "I know exactly who he is." Outside the glass wall, two of Tae-hyun's security men stood casually, watching. Derek followed her gaze. "You tied yourself to someone dangerous," he said quietly. She held his stare. "No," she replied. "He chose to stand beside me." The meeting ended without resolution, but that evening things escalated. A financial blog published a rumor that Lawson Authentication was under federal investigation for intellectual property disputes. Stock prices dipped immediately. Investors panicked. The board called an emergency video conference. Derek denied involvement. But Sienna saw the pattern. He was creating chaos. If the company looked unstable, the board might reconsider leadership changes. They might beg him to restore confidence. But he underestimated something again. Tae-hyun did not play defensively. Within hours, his firm released a formal statement backing Sienna's leadership and confirming internal audits showed no fraud. Then, something else happened. A private investigation report surfaced. Not leaked. Released. It detailed Derek's attempted unauthorized file access. Time-stamped, verified, legal. The board called Derek into another meeting the next morning. This time, it was not polite. "You attempted to extract proprietary data," the director said coldly. Derek's lawyer tried to speak, but the evidence was clear. "You violated fiduciary responsibility," another board member added. Sienna watched silently. This was not revenge. This was consequence. Derek's voice cracked slightly. "I was securing backup copies." "Without authorization," the director replied. Silence answered her. The vote was unanimous. Derek Lawson was removed from all executive positions, effective immediately. His remaining shares would stay, but he would have no operational control. Security escorted him from the building. Employees watched from behind glass walls as he walked out carrying a single box. Sienna stood in her office and saw him leave. For a moment, she felt something close to sadness, not for him, for what they once believed they could build together. Her phone buzzed. "Tae-hyun, it's done." She typed back, "Yes." That night, she went to his penthouse. The city lights reflected across the glass walls. "You didn't have to release the investigation publicly," she said softly. "I did," he replied. He would not stop. She stepped closer to him. "And now?" "Now he understands limits." There was something in his tone that carried weight beyond business. Something deeper, older. She studied him. "Your world is different from mine," she said quietly. He looked down at her. "You are my world." The words were simple, but they carried a promise. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "No one steals from you again," he added softly, And for the first time, she understood fully what it meant to be protected by someone powerful enough to make enemies disappear. Outside, the city continued as always. But inside that glass tower, power had shifted permanently. And Derek Lawson had just learned that losing a genius was one thing. Making her an enemy was another. The story was not about revenge anymore. It was about control. And Sienna was no longer the woman who walked away quietly. She was the woman who took everything back. 3 months later, Derek tried one last time. Not through the board. Not through the media. Through pride. A new startup appeared overnight, backed by unknown investors, focused on art authentication, promising a faster, smarter system. The tech blogs picked it up instantly. Derek Lawson returns with revolutionary AI. Sienna read the headline in silence. Maya looked up from her tablet. He really cannot let you breathe. Tae-hyun did not look surprised. He won't stop until he proves something, he said calmly. To who? Sienna asked. To himself. The startup launched a demo video 2 days later. Sienna watched it alone in her lab. The interface looked different. The branding was new. But the structure beneath it felt familiar. Too familiar. Her fingers moved across her keyboard quickly, pulling archived build files from years ago. Then she saw it. A pattern in the architecture. A flaw she once fixed during early development. Derek had rebuilt her early prototype. Not the final version. The imperfect version. She leaned back in her chair. He rushed, she whispered. He had tried to replicate genius without understanding it. That night, the startup hosted a live investor demonstration. Sienna did not attend, but Tae-hyun did. Quietly, unannounced. The event took place in a sleek downtown hotel ballroom. Investors filled the room. Screens glowed. Derek stood at the center again, dressed in confidence that did not quite fit him anymore. This, he announced proudly, is the future of authentication. The system analyzed a painting. Charts appeared. Numbers moved. Applause began to build. Then the screen froze. A small glitch. Derek forced a smile. Minor delay. The system resumed. But something was wrong. The authentication result contradicted publicly verified data. Murmurs spread. An investor raised a hand. That painting was confirmed authentic last year. Derek frowned at the screen. The data shifted again, contradicted itself. The flaw in the architecture surfaced exactly as Sienna predicted. A flaw she fixed 3 years ago. The room turned restless, and then Tae-hyun stood up. He did not raise his voice. But silence followed him anyway. Your neural mapping still fails under irregular pigment data, he said calmly. You never solved the loss function instability. Derek's face strained. How would you know that? He demanded. Because you are using an outdated build, Tae-hyun replied, one that was abandoned before it was complete. Investors began checking their phones. Stock numbers dipped in real time. Confidence evaporated. You claimed this was a new system, one investor said sharply. It is, Derek insisted. It's evolved. No, Tae-hyun corrected. It's copied. Quote, the word echoed. Copied. The demonstration collapsed after that. Investors left early. Funding conversations cooled instantly. By morning, tech blogs had a new headline. Lawson's second fall. Sienna did not celebrate. She did not need to. She stood in her lab as her own team prepared for a global expansion announcement. Her system had been upgraded again. Stronger, smarter, fully hers. At noon, she stepped into a press conference. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Dr. Sienna Blake stood at the podium. Calm, composed, unshaken. 3 years ago, she began, I built a system that changed art authentication. Today, we are expanding it globally with museum partnerships across Europe and Asia. Behind her, the company logo displayed her name clearly beneath the title Chief Technology Officer. No one erased her now. After the conference, she walked outside into the sunlight. Taehyun waited by the car. He did not speak immediately. He simply looked at her like she was something rare and powerful. "It's over," she said softly. "Yes," he replied. Derek's startup lost funding within a week. Without technology he understood, without credibility, without the system he once stole, he had nothing left to stand on. He faded from headlines, not with drama, but with silence. That evening, Taehyun brought her somewhere unexpected. Not a gala, not a penthouse. A quiet rooftop overlooking the river. Simple lights. Soft wind. "You like control," he said gently. "I like fairness," she corrected. He smiled slightly. "My grandmother wants to meet you." Sienna laughed softly. "That sounds serious." "It is." He stepped closer. "In my world," he said quietly, "when I stand beside someone publicly, it means something." She looked up at him. "And what does this mean?" His hand slid into hers. "It means I do not let go." There were no cameras, no investors, no enemies watching. Just the city below, and the quiet understanding between them. She had taken back her work. She had taken back her name. And now she stood beside a man powerful enough to destroy empires, yet careful enough to protect her dreams. "I'm not a shadow," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "You're the mind behind the empire." She leaned into him. For years she built in silence. Now she built in light. Derek once believed he could erase her. Instead, he created the woman who would rise above him. And in the end, the Korean Mafia boss did not need to claim her loudly. The world already knew. She was never his shadow. She was always the genius. And this time, everyone saw it.